Every Veterans Day, we honor the men and women who served and are serving our country. Sadly, many understandably struggle with some of the things that they've seen and experienced during their tour of duty. Suicide among veterans is a heartbreaking topic, but it's a subject that one mother wants people to understand. Dr. Cynthia Crosson, a psychiatric social worker, lost her soldier son to suicide when he was just 22 years old. She's written a new book, You Cannot Cage a Wolf, which is about her healing process. She sat down recently with Carolee McGrath and shared her journey.
Jayme was a very special guy. He was 22 when he died, but during his 22 years, he touched a lot of people. He attracted 250, and this is a small town, 250 folks at his calling hours and funeral, and just was well loved. Very spiritual in his own way, not necessarily organized religions, but just very spiritual. Was loved to save things, would save, animals and people, and just a very loving and giving kid.
Jayme was deployed to Bosnia.
He was deployed in Bosnia, yes.
And he took his own life.
He did, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what he was exposed to in Bosnia.
Well, a little background first. I think that Jayme lived a life in a small town and was kind of probably shielded. He had two doting parents who probably shielded him a bit, and then he went off to Bosnia. A lot of people think because Bosnia is called a peacekeeping mission, or was called a peacekeeping mission, a lot of people think that it was kind of a piece of cake. But Jayme wrote home a letter about being in charge of a detail where the Nationals were digging up the bodies that had been put in mass graves and reburying them. And this is when he was 19 that he's experiencing this. And I don't think he'd ever experienced death at all. They couldn't go outside the post because there were still minefields. They had to worry about IEDs, and there was still animosity between the two factions in Bosnia, and so the soldiers were never terribly sure when they'd get in the middle of something like that. But one of the things that Jayme did when he was in Bosnia, though, was he loved the children, and he would kind of talk to the children. And I think one of the things that really bothered him was what the children were exposed to, and the women with the ethnic cleansing over there. So he was really very affected by that.
And when this happened in your family, obviously nobody could possibly, be prepared. As a mother,
True.
How do you even begin to face the next day or even the next minute of the day?
Well, you deny a lot. Jayme was exhibiting a lot of the symptoms that we know from PTSD. He was having flashbacks. He was afraid to go out in crowds, including his dad has a big family, and he didn't even want to go to their Christmas celebration because the crowds were just too much for him, even though they were people he knew. He wouldn't sleep at night. He was afraid of things. He had startle reflex, all the things that you think of with PTSD. But I was his mom, and despite the fact that I might have been a therapist, I was looking at the trees, not the forest. And I just was dealing with one symptom after another. So I don't think that I fully comprehended that he had post-traumatic stress disorder.
How do you help other families who are in your same situation? I know faith is a very big part of your life as well, but how do you even begin that conversation for somebody who has been just so crushed by what you've experienced as well?
Well, I think how do you begin the conversation? I think a lot of it is listening first, because families need to talk and need to. I actually co-facilitate a grief group for families of veterans who have died by suicide. And part of it is just listening. But then I think there's a process. You listen. You try to help them to explore the memories and the good memories. And I think also, and it certainly worked for me, that there's a point at which, and you have to be ready for this, but there's a point at which if you begin to reach out to other people in various ways, that kind of puts the fine-tuning on your own healing.
You wrote the book, You Cannot Cage the Wolf, and
I did.
It's recently been released. Tell us a little bit about the book.
The book was initially, I started working with veterans with post-traumatic stress, with service dogs, and I was so taken with the results we were getting. These veterans were blossoming with service dogs. I have since learned that there's actually a physiological connection, that physiologically animals help you as well. But I was so impressed with this that I wanted to tell the world. And so I started the book, and the book was initially called Healing with a Cold Nose. And then I started working with a very talented editor, and she helped me to realize that this was not necessarily just about service dogs, but about my own healing. So the book starts with the death of my son, and then it looks at my own, I went into a depression, looks at my own depression. And then I partnered with this little fellow here on the floor, who is a service dog for ministry. His name is Dandy. He's now 15. But he was the catalyst that began to bring me out of things, began to bring my healing into focus. He came from an excellent agency called Needs. I was working with Needs, and they asked if I could possibly, knowing my background in post-traumatic stress, asked me if I could develop a program for veterans with post-traumatic stress. And I did. And the interesting thing was I did not see it as a direct connection to my son at that point, but as I started interviewing the veterans that we were going to place with, have service dogs place with them, I began to see my son. And it was like everything came full circle, and I realized that this was kind of prompted by my need to heal through seeing other veterans heal.
So each person that you meet, and as you see your son in each person that you meet, do you share your story?
Sometimes I do. It depends on the veteran, my feeling is it's not my need to share as much as their need to hear it. I often wonder if my son would still be alive if he had a program like this, because he loved animals. The wolf was his totem. He loved dogs. And it's been a deterrent to other veterans taking their life by suicide.
And when you look at the national numbers, just even according to the VA,
Yes.
17 veterans a day.
It's actually 20 to 22, depending upon the statistics.
Depending upon the statistics, right? Because there was a new study that they had released that said it was 17. But either, whichever it is.
17 too many.
It's horrific.
Yes, it is.
This is obviously your life's mission. How do you encourage other families who have a loved one who's suffering from PTSD, to reach out for help if they're not sure, where to go and how to help them?
There are resources now that there weren't necessarily. There's an organization called TAPS, which supports families who have lost people to the military, sons, daughters, husbands, wives. Obviously, as a therapist, I'm a great believer in therapy, which I think does help. But being gentle with yourself, anybody who's had that experience of losing a loved one to suicide, be gentle with yourself. And once you begin to feel more of your healing, I think that's a time when you can begin to reach out for others.
So tell us a little bit about the title of the book, You Cannot Cage the Wolf.
Yes. Jayme loved wolves. He considered the wolf his totem, and therefore loved dogs and that kind of thing. But I called it You Cannot Cage the Wolf because there were several things that were going on during his lifetime. I think he felt caged or trapped by the feelings of post-traumatic stress. His last hours, he also felt very trapped. And I say in the end of the book that sometimes we have a summer place, and sometimes at the summer place I will hear the wolves howling, and I'll think of the fact that they're free. And I kind of feel that Jayme's in that too, that he's now free.